I was 7 years old when my parents moved into the old house. From the outside, it looked normal. White walls, broken swing in the yard, a single window on the top floor that always looked darker than the rest. That window was my room. The first night I slept there, I felt it. Not fear. Not yet, just the feeling of being observed. I remember lying on my bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of my parents talking downstairs. The house creaked like it was breathing. And then, I heard it, a soft sound, like fingernails brushing against wood. I sat up slowly. The sound was coming from inside my room, from the walls. The first sign. At first I thought it was rats. That's what adults always say, right? It's just rats. It's just the wind. But rats don't stop when you whisper. Please, stop. That night, I pressed my blanket over my head and counted numbers until I fell asleep. The next morning, I noticed something strange. My toys were moved. My toy car, the red one, was sitting upright on the windowsill. I never put it there. I asked my mother. She smiled and said, "You probably did it in your sleep." But I knew I didn't, because the window was too high. The corner. Every night after that, the feeling grew stronger. The room felt aware. The air in the corners was heavier, darker, especially one corner, the one behind my cupboard. I stopped playing there, stopped looking at it, because whenever I did, my chest felt tight, like my lungs forgot how to breathe. One night, I finally asked my father, "Did someone live in my room before me?" He froze, just for a second. Then he laughed. Don't think about useless things. That was the first time I realized. Adults lie better than children. It happened on a rainy night. Thunder shook the house. The power went out. My room was pitch black. I was lying awake when I heard it again. The scratching. But this time, it was closer. Right next to my ear. Then came the whisper. Not loud. Not clear. But close enough that I felt breath on my skin. It said my name. Slowly, like it was tasting it. I screamed. My parents rushed in. Lights on. Nothing there. But the corner. The corner was colder than the rest of the room. The drawing. A few days later, my teacher called my parents. She showed them a drawing I made. It was our house, but with something extra. A tall black figure standing in my room. No face. Just eyes. Many eyes. My teacher asked me what it was. I said, "That's the room." Everyone laughed. I didn't. The final night. The last night I slept in that room, I woke up unable to move. Sleep paralysis, they would call it years later. But back then, I only knew fear. I couldn't scream. I couldn't breathe. And then, the corner moved. Not a shadow. Not an illusion. It unfolded, like a body that had been hiding inside the wall. It leaned toward me and whispered, "You finally noticed." I fainted. Aftermath. We moved out the next week. My parents never talked about it again. But sometimes, when I visit my childhood town, I see that house, abandoned, boarded up, except for one window. Still dark, still watching. Some childhood games are forgotten with time. Others are remembered with laughter. And then there are games that follow you. Games that don't end when childhood ends. This is one of those games. I was 9 years old when I learned that some places in a house are not empty, even when they look like they are. The stairs. Our house had a narrow staircase leading to the second floor. Under those stairs was a small wooden door. It was always locked. No one ever talked about it. If you asked my parents what was under the stairs, they would say, storage. Or sometimes, nothing important. But children know when adults are hiding something. The door had scratch marks on it. Deep ones. Too deep for wood. The new boy. That summer, a new boy moved into our neighborhood. His name was Elliot. Quiet, skin too pale, eyes always tired like he hadn't slept in years. The first thing he asked me wasn't my name. It was, "Does your house whisper at night too?" I laughed. I shouldn't have. The game. One evening, while our parents talked outside, Elliot leaned close and whispered, "Do you want to play a game?" I asked what kind. He said, "A listening game." That's when he told me about the game under the stairs. Rules of the game. There were rules. There were always rules. Play only after midnight. No lights. Sit back to back. Ask only 3 questions. Never ask your name. Never open the door. And the final rule, if it asks you something, you must answer. I didn't believe him. But curiosity is stronger than fear when you're a child. At exactly 12:03 a.m., we sat on the floor in front of the door. The house was silent. No lights. Just breathing. Elliot knocked on the door 3 times. Slowly. Then he whispered, "Is anyone there?" At first, nothing. Then, a sound from inside the door. Not knocking. Not scratching. Something shifting. Like a body adjusting itself. The voice came out soft. Too soft. Like it didn't use its voice often. Yes. I felt my stomach drop. Elliot didn't react. Like he had heard it before. He asked the first question. "Are you alone?" The voice paused. No. The questions. My turn. My heart was beating so loud I thought it could hear me. I asked, "How many of you are there?" Silence. Then, "Enough." Elliot asked the third question. "How long have you been here?" The answer came immediately. Since I was forgotten, it asked back. We were supposed to stop, but then the voice spoke again. Now my turn. Elliot went stiff. What do you want to ask?" he whispered. The voice said, "Which one of you wants to stay?" The rule break. We were supposed to answer, but I didn't. I ran. I ran to my room and hid under my blanket, shaking. I heard Elliot screaming behind me. Not loud, not long, just once. The next day, Elliot didn't come to school. His house was empty, furniture gone, parents gone, like they had never existed. I asked my mother. She frowned. "What, Elliot?" She said no one lived there before. The mark. That night I noticed something on my arm. A handprint. Small, dark, too many fingers. It faded by morning, but I still feel it sometimes. Grabbing, pulling, the door. Years later, when I was 16, I finally opened the door under the stairs. It was empty. No room, no storage, just a wall. But carved into the wall were words, written from the inside. They said, "You left me." There is a moment in every childhood when you realize mirrors aren't just for looking, they are for watching. I was 10 years old when my reflection started behaving differently than me. At first it was small things. Things you could ignore. Things you shouldn't. The mirror. The bathroom mirror in our house was old. Edges rusted. Glass slightly warped. If you stared long enough, your face looked stretched. Like it didn't fully belong to you. I hated brushing my teeth there. Not because of the mirror, but because of the feeling that it was brushing back. The first time. One night I was washing my hands before bed, half asleep, yawning. I looked up, and my reflection smiled. I hadn't. Not a big smile. Just a small one. Quick. Like it was testing me. I froze. Then I smiled on purpose. The reflection copied me instantly. Perfectly. I told myself I imagined it. Children imagine things. That's what adults say. The delay. After that, the delay began. When I moved my hand, the reflection followed a second later. When I blinked, it blinked slower. Just enough for me to notice. I started counting. 1, 2. That's how long it took my reflection to copy me. Always 2 seconds late. The question. One night I whispered, "Why are you late?" The reflection didn't move. Its mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then it mouthed words, slowly, carefully. Because I'm learning. I ran to my parents' room crying. They told me I was having nightmares, but they locked the bathroom door that night. A few days later, my mother told me something strange. She said, "You used to talk to yourself in the mirror when you were little." I said I didn't remember. She said, "You called it your friend." That didn't feel right, because whatever was in the mirror wasn't friendly. The photograph. While cleaning the attic, I found an old photo album. Most pictures were normal. Birthday cakes, school photos, family smiles. Then I saw one picture that made my stomach turn. It was me, standing in front of the bathroom mirror. But the reflection was facing the wrong direction. Its head tilted, smiling, wide, too wide. On the back of the photo in my handwriting were the words, "This is the one who stays." The night it spoke. I couldn't sleep. At 2:11 a.m. I heard tapping. Soft, rhythmic. From the bathroom. I knew better, but I went anyway. The mirror was fogged, like someone had just taken a shower. A handprint appeared, from the inside. Then words formed, dragged slowly through the fog. "You promised." My reflection appeared. It didn't copy me anymore. It moved first. The truth. It spoke. Not aloud, but inside my head. "You got to grow up." I stayed. "You got to leave." I was locked in. "You lived." I watched. I screamed and smashed the mirror. Glass everywhere. Blood on my hands. But even broken, every shard reflected the same smile. What they never told me. My parents replaced the mirror the next day. Never talked about it again. Years later, after my mother died, I found hospital records. I was supposed to be a twin, but only one of us survived. The other was absorbed, vanished, forgotten. Sometimes late at night, when the lights are off, I catch my reflection smiling. Before I do, and I wonder, which one of us actually survived? There are birthdays you remember because they were happy, and then there are birthdays your mind locks away, because remembering them would destroy you. This is the birthday I wasn't supposed to remember. I was 11 years old. That was the year my parents finally agreed to let me have a birthday party at home. I invited 5 kids from school. Only 4 showed up. That should have been my first warning. The basement. Our house had a basement. Not the normal kind. No windows. No proper lights. Just a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. The basement door was always locked. My father said it was dangerous. My mother said it was unfinished. But whenever I walked past that door, I could hear something. Not footsteps. Not voices. Something closer to children breathing. The party. The party started normally. Cake. Balloons. Cheap decorations taped to the walls. Everyone was laughing. But one kid, Mark, kept staring at the basement door. He finally asked, "What's down there?" Before I could answer, the lights flickered. The basement door clicked. Unlocked. On its own. The game idea. Kids get bored quickly. Mark smiled and said, "Let's play hide and seek." Before anyone could say no, he opened the basement door. A wave of cold air rushed out. It smelled like dust. And something sweet. Rotten sweet. Going down. We went down one by one. The stairs creaked like they were tired of holding weight. The bulb flickered on. And that's when we saw it. Birthday decorations. Old ones. Faded balloons. Paper streamers hanging limp. A long table. 6 chairs. But only 4 of them were dusty. 2 looked recently used. As we stood there confused, we heard singing. Soft, out of tune. Children's voices. But none of us were singing. The sound came from the far corner of the basement, where the light didn't reach. The other kids. Shapes moved in the darkness. Small. Too small. Hands appeared first. Then faces. Pale. Smiling. Eyes wide with hunger. They looked like children. But something was wrong. Their mouths opened too far. Their necks bent strangely. They whispered, "Is it time?" The cake. On the table was a cake. Fresh. Candles already lit. The number on top, 11. My age. One of the figures stepped forward and said, "You're late." The rule. That's when I remembered something. A rule my parents had told me long ago. Never go into the basement. Never accept anything from the basement. And never celebrate down there. Mark. Mark stepped forward. He laughed nervously. Nice prank. One of the children grabbed his hand. Mark screamed. The lights went out. When they came back on, Mark was gone. Only his shoes remained, perfectly placed under one of the clean chairs. The door slammed. We ran, screaming, crying, pushing each other up the stairs. The basement door slammed shut behind us, locked from the inside. After, the police came. They searched the basement. They found nothing. No decorations. No table. No chairs. Just empty concrete. Mark was declared missing.
My parents never spoke of that night again.
They threw away all birthday photos, stopped celebrating birthdays entirely, the suppressed memory. For years I forgot. My mind buried it, until my 11th birthday cake showed up in my dreams. Candles lit, voices singing, always missing one child. Last year I went back to that house. It's abandoned now, but in the basement, I found 6 chairs, one still clean, waiting. I don't sleep in darkness anymore. Not because I'm afraid of monsters, but because I know what happens when they think you've forgotten them. For years, I believed my childhood memories were separate. Different houses, different ages, different fears. A room that watched me, a game under the stairs, a reflection that smiled first, a birthday that stole a child. I was wrong. They were never separate. They were chapters of the same story. There's a pattern. It started when I found the diaries. Not mine, my parents'. After they both passed away, I cleaned out their old storage unit. At the very back, wrapped in plastic, were 5 notebooks, each labeled with dates, each dated before I was born. The first entry. The first diary talked about the house. The house with the dark window. It wasn't our first home. It was the last home no family ever stayed in for long. The diary said the house was hungry. Not for food, for children who noticed it. The second entry. The next diary mentioned something under the stairs. Not storage, not empty space, a place where forgotten things gathered. Forgotten children, forgotten reflections, forgotten birthdays. It said once something was forgotten long enough, it learned how to ask to be remembered again. The third entry. Then I read the entry that made me physically sick. The one about the mirror. My mother wrote, "We lost one of them, not in the womb, in the house." She said mirrors were doors, and one of us never came back out. The fourth entry. The basement, the birthdays. The reason they stopped celebrating, they knew. They always knew. The basement wasn't below the house. It was inside it, a place where time looped, where the house kept what it was owed. The last diary had only one sentence, written in shaking handwriting. If he remembers everything, the house will remember him. The dream. That night I dreamed of all of them. Elliot sat under the stairs. Mark sat at the birthday table. My reflection stood behind me. And the room watched. They weren't angry. They were patient. They spoke together in the same voice. "We kept your memories safe. You owe us now." The realization. I understood then. The house didn't take children. It took pieces. A friend, a twin, a year, a memory. And it let you live as long as you didn't remember everything. Why the lights stay on. I sleep with the lights on because darkness helps them gather. I avoid mirrors at night because reflections don't like being ignored. I don't celebrate birthdays because something always expects to be invited. And I never play games with rules I don't understand. The final truth. You're reading this because I wrote it down. Once something is written, it's no longer forgotten, which means the house knows where I am now. And maybe now it knows where you are too. Last line, end of part 5. If your house feels like it's watching you tonight, don't turn off the light, because remembering is how it gets inside.